plugin of the week is the Waves Renaissance Bass. The Waves Renaissance Bass is a plugin that is basically an extension of the Max Bass plugin. And the idea of the Renaissance Bass plugin and the Max Bass plugin, it works on this idea of the way that the brain works in terms of filling in frequencies that are not there. So it's an artificial means of creating low end where low end doesn't naturally exist, and it allows you to shape low end. Now, the way this is done is by the addition of harmonics. So when you actually have a note that's played by an instrument, it has a harmonic series, and these are multiples of the actual fundamental frequency. So if the fundamental frequency was, say, 100 cycles, then the harmonics would be 200, 300, 400, 500, 600. And those end up representing musical notes, interestingly enough. So when we go on from, say, the first note, and we go from 100 to 200, that would be an octave. And then if we go up to the next note, which is 300, it actually ends up being a perfect fifth. And then it goes to an octave again, and then from there it goes up to a perfect fourth. And it starts to do this, so over the course of the harmonic series, you end up with notes that have a musical value that are just multiples of the original frequency. So the idea of this plugin is that when you actually add in the effect, what it's doing is it's adding in these harmonics, which would make a bass audible during either quiet passages or in smaller speakers where there's not a lot of low frequency response. And what it can actually do is it can take instruments, and this plugin is even designed this way, where you can artificially add low end to speakers that actually can't handle it. And so this plugin can actually be used for a sound system, for public address systems, for things like this where you're running basically small speakers. You can't get enough low-end drivers, so what this does is it will artificially create enough of the other harmonic frequencies that your brain fills out that sub-frequency and sort of adds it in. So it's kind of an interesting study in how the brain and the use of that and the way, understanding of the way that it works, you get these psychoacoustic effects that are really important. Okay, so let's get on to what the plugin actually does. Basically what you're working with is you have three basic sections. You're going to see your input level, you're going to see the amount of harmonic effect that's added, and you're going to see the output level. You have three basic sliders that are controlled, and this is the frequency. So when you select this frequency to whatever frequency you select it to, it starts to generate harmonics for everything below the amount that you set here. So in other words, you can get more of a mid-rangey type of effect by bringing it up here. You can get more sub-frequencies by making it lower, and it defaults to about 80 cycles, which is a typical kind of crossover point for subwoofers in speaker systems. So there's sort of a connection in here with that. The intensity is the amount of the effect, and the in switch here determines whether you want the original bass sound to be actually part of it. So the way that I generally work the plugin would be, let's just start with it bypassed, and let's just listen to, for example, just a little bit of a... Now this actually has a fair amount of low end added in, so I'm actually going to do something here just to kind of show you a little bit of effect on it. This is nothing that I've set up here on my own. So I'm actually going to roll off some low frequencies here and show you how we can kind of add this in, right, with the plugin. Okay, so I'm just going to leave this sort of set up over to the side so you can see that there's no sleight of hand. I'm not adding anything in here. So when I bring this in, I have my intensity down here, because even though it says minus 24, the 0 point is meant to be some sort of equal amount of the artificial or harmonics that are added in. So as I bring this in, so you can hear there already that I have the frequency. So now I can determine how much and where they're centered. So this is actually this is what's really cool about this, is that sometimes you end up with a bass part where the low end is actually too much in the track, and you want to feel more of the low end than you actually want to hear it. So you could actually filter off some of those sub frequencies and put it in a little bit more artificially. Now, so the idea then here is I can take the original also and leave this in, so I could have just the harmonics that are added in. And keep the original in, and that's typically what you would do. It depends on what it is, but just to give you an idea here of what this does, I'm going to exaggerate the effect. Right, and then you could hear like how bassy it becomes. Now notice I haven't, because I'm rolling off everything below 91 cycles here. And what's really cool about this is that what we're really doing is we're artificially creating this without actually adding it in. And that's sort of the tricky part to figure out with this. And this is really cool because in this particular track, what we have, like, this is like, you could hear like there's an 808 kick, right? This has a lot of this sustained low end, which is going to interfere with the bass sound. Right, so that creates a lot of disruptive energy between the two. And that becomes, that low end is almost like just too much of a, a mess that's kind of in there. But that, which probably would need to be filtered. So that's just straight up the way that it is. But you could hear how this is sort of artificially adding in those low frequencies. And the more I lower this, the more it's targeting that towards sub frequencies. And as I raise it up, you can hear how it gets more mid-rangey, which actually is really cool. Like if we took this out here and we wanted to, if we were just trying to bring in a little bit of mid-range presence, we could do so this way without really affecting the low end. Part of this is just also getting the gain structure right. And so in this way you can kind of shape the tonal character of the song a bit. And so it's kind of a cool plugin. Gives you like some good basic controls. My basic suggestion for starting with this is bringing the intensity down and then kind of finding the frequency that gives you the fullness or character. You can filter the low end or not, depending upon how much you want to shape that, within the sound. The more you want to focus it on sub frequencies, the lower you want to shift this. You bring up the intensity. Sometimes you can bring it up a little bit higher just to kind of focus in the frequency for where you want it. And then kind of balance it off, and then adjust your makeup gain. And what we can do here is add some like clarity where you get this feeling of all this sub low end without actually having it there. And that's really amazing, because what it does is it takes the load off of the low end drivers of your speakers and makes them operate more efficiently. So it's a very cool plugin, and one that's worth kind of playing around with. The max the Max Bass plugin is more sophisticated and gives you more unique controls. And that's a whole separate video, plugin of the week video. So that's one that's also covered in the Waves plugins course. But this is a very cool one. Very cool, and it's like a lot that you can do with, and especially where you have a troublesome bass, this is one to kind of pull out of the rack of plugins and throw on there and see what you can mash together with it. Very cool one, and that's part of the Renaissance collection, Renaissance Max collection. That's like an amazing collection of plugins, some really, really powerful stuff, and it's worth experimenting with and understanding. Okay, there you have it. There's the Max Bass, the Renaissance Bass, plugin by Waves.